before her younger brother ever came to visit, before the broken trust that would shatter what little strength she had left, there was another story. A love that wasn't truly love. A performance. Her name was Adora, 27 years old, a marketing executive in Lagos who had learned to carry herself with quiet confidence. His name was Chike, 31, an entrepreneur with a silver tongue, a well-cut wardrobe, and the kind of easy smile that made you feel chosen the moment he looked at you. They first crossed paths on a rainy evening in the heart of the city. Adora was stepping out of a small cafe in Victoria Island, clutching a file against her chest to shield it from the drizzle. The humid wind carried the faint smell of coffee and wet asphalt. Her hair, loosened by the damp air, clung to her face in soft strands. Under the shade of a nearby shop's awning stood Chike, phone in hand, head bowed like he was reading something important. But in truth, he had been watching her from the moment she appeared through the cafe's glass door. When their eyes met briefly, he didn't waste a second. "Excuse me," he said with a playful tilt of his head, "but I think the rain is jealous. You're stealing all the attention out here." His voice was warm, smooth, just enough charm to make her smile despite herself. She should have kept walking, but something in his delivery disarmed her. They talked briefly, and before she knew it, she had given him her number. Their early days were intoxicating. Casual outings at cozy lounges in Lekki, midnight calls that stretched until the line crackled with silence, and stolen moments in the back of his car after dinner dates. Adora liked him, his confidence, his ambition, the way he looked her in the eyes when he spoke, like she was the only person who mattered in that moment. But from the very beginning, she had been firm about one thing. "I'm not ready to start a family now," she told him one evening over suya at a roadside stand. "We have to be careful. Always use protection." Chike nodded easily. In those early weeks, he didn't argue. He would reach for a condom without hesitation, sometimes even joking, "Your wish is my command, Madam Executive." He made it seem like there was no rush, like he respected her boundaries completely. And Adora believed him. But months later, something shifted. One humid night, after they had been out drinking with friends, he pulled her close in his living room, his breath warm against her ear. "It's not sweet with condoms," he murmured. "It's not the same. Let's just enjoy it naturally. Trust me." She pulled back, frowning. "You know why we can't do that, Chike?" He chuckled softly, brushing her cheek with his thumb. "I'll control myself. Nothing will happen." The first time they did it without protection, it was entirely his idea. He kissed her deeply, voice low and persuasive against her lips. "Just this once. I'll be careful." At first, she resisted, but the warmth of his hands, the steady rhythm of his touch, and the trust she thought she had in him chipped away at her resolve. To her surprise, she enjoyed it more than she expected. There was a closeness, a rawness to it, that made her heart pound differently. But beneath that new thrill was a small knot of unease, a reminder of every conversation where she'd said she wasn't ready. It didn't stay a just once thing. Every time, she told herself she'd insist on a condom next time. Every time she didn't, it was a slow surrender, one where pleasure outweighed caution. And Chike never complained. One night, in his Lekki apartment with the ceiling fan whirring lazily above them, Adora lay in his arms, the air still thick with the warmth of their bodies. Her mind wouldn't rest. She turned to him. "Chike, what if I get pregnant?" He didn't even blink. Instead, he met her eyes with a half-smile. "That won't be a problem. I'm not planning it, but if it happens, it'll just make things faster for us. I'll take responsibility." The way he said it, smooth, confident, slid into her like honey, coating her fears just enough to make them quiet. She still felt a flicker of doubt, but his assurance was a blanket she wrapped around herself. She didn't know yet that some promises are only made to keep the moment sweet, not the future safe. Adora had always loved the way Chike touched her. Not just his hands, but the deliberate patience behind them. The way his fingers lingered like they were memorizing her skin. The way his palm traced slow, lazy circles on her back. His kisses felt like they could stop time. In those moments, all her earlier rules about protection dissolved. She wasn't thinking about consequences. She was thinking about how he made her feel wanted, how his attention felt like sunlight on a cold morning. Weeks blurred into months. She stopped tracking her cycle. He certainly wasn't paying attention. When she missed her period the first month, she told herself it was stress from work. When the second month passed, unease grew in her chest. One Saturday morning, while Chaik was out with his friends, Adora walked to a small pharmacy in Surlir. The shop smelled faintly of antiseptic and dust. She bought a pregnancy test and returned to her apartment, locking the bathroom door behind her. Her hands trembled as she waited. 2 pink lines. Pregnant. Her knees weakened. She slid to the cold floor tiles, staring at the test like it might change if she looked away. Chaik's words came rushing back. If it happens, I'll take responsibility. But would he still mean it now that if had become reality? She kept the news to herself for 2 days. In that time, she watched him closely. How he laughed easily over dinner, how he made weekend plans, how his gaze never lingered on her long enough to notice the quiet shift in her mood. She rehearsed the conversation in her head. Would she tell him while they were cooking, or in bed, or over a quiet dinner? Each scenario ended differently, some with relief, some with anger, some with him walking away. But no matter how she imagined it, she knew the truth. Once she spoke the words, nothing would ever be the same. It was a Tuesday morning in his apartment. Weak sunlight filtered through half-closed curtains. Chaik was buttoning his crisp white shirt, his watch already on the table beside him. Adora stood in the doorway, clutching the pregnancy test in her hand. Chaik, I need to tell you something. He glanced up, distracted. I'm pregnant. The air seemed to still. His hand froze mid-button. His eyes searched her face as if waiting for her to laugh and say it was a joke. She didn't. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, almost calm. But the accusation inside it was sharp. How could you let this happen, Adora? She blinked. Let it happen? Chaik, I told you so many times I was tired of taking post pills. They were messing up my cycle. You knew that. But he didn't let her finish. He shook his head, grabbed his watch, and walked past her. The slam of the door was heavier than any insult. That evening, she waited for him in the living room. The TV on but her thoughts far away. When he returned, he didn't greet her, didn't ask if she'd eaten, didn't look at her. He walked straight to the bedroom, showered, and went to bed without a word. From that day, something in him shut down. The warmth in his voice vanished. His touches stopped. The man who once couldn't go a day without making her laugh now treated her like a stranger. Just another tenant in his space. And Adora, sitting alone at night with the sound of the ceiling fan filling the silence, finally understood. The man who had promised to take responsibility couldn't even take a conversation. 2 days passed in suffocating silence. Chaik moved around the apartment as if she were invisible. No good mornings. No are you okay, no fleeting touches in the hallway. It was as though the man who once held her face in his hands and promised forever had been replaced by a stranger who couldn't even meet her eyes. On the 3rd day, late in the afternoon, he finally spoke. Adora was sitting on the edge of the couch, scrolling aimlessly through her phone without really seeing the screen. Her mind was a fog of dread and unanswered questions. She heard his footsteps cross the tiled floor and felt him stop in front of her. When he spoke, his voice was flat, businesslike, as if they were negotiating a bill. Adora, you need to do an abortion. Her head jerked up, phone slipping from her fingers. What? Chaik didn't flinch. I'm not ready for this. Her mouth fell open. Chaik, you told me you were ready. He cut her off with a small shake of his head, like she was a child refusing to listen. That time I was expecting some money. I thought things would be different by now. But the money didn't come the way I planned. I'm not in the position to raise a child. Not now. His words landed like stones in her chest, each one pressing the air out of her lungs. She stared at him, searching for any flicker of hesitation. Some crack in his armor that might let her believe he was only speaking out of fear. But his eyes were cold, his tone measured, as though he had thought this through and decided she was the one who had to adjust. Her voice trembled. "I can't do an abortion. I can't. This is my child too." Chike's jaw tightened. His reply was ice. "Then you have two options. Do it and stay with me, or refuse and leave." Adora's breath caught. A knot of fear coiled in her stomach. Not just fear of being alone, but of raising a child without a safety net, without the man she had once believed was her partner. But the thought of ending the life inside her felt like a betrayal she could never live with. She swallowed hard, her heart pounding. "Then I'll leave." That night, she lay in bed beside him, tears soaking her pillow. Chike slept with his back to her, his breathing deep and even, as if nothing had been said. He didn't touch her. He didn't turn toward her. He didn't even notice the way her body shook with quiet sobs. By morning, she had made her choice. Before the sun had fully risen, Adora packed her things. She moved quietly, the wheels of her small suitcase humming against the tiled floor. A part of her hoped, against all logic, that he would stop her, ask her to stay, or at least look up. But Chike sat at the dining table, scrolling through his phone without lifting his head. She walked to the door, pulled it open, and stepped out. The sound of her suitcase rolling down the hallway echoed like a final goodbye. He never called, never texted, never checked if she made it to her destination safely. In that silence, she understood. Chike hadn't just abandoned her. He had abandoned their child before it even took its first breath. Surreal. When Adora arrived at her friend Amaka's apartment, her eyes were swollen and her shoulders slumped under the weight of what had just happened. She barely had time to drop her bag before Amaka shut the door and wrapped her in a hug. "Ada, what happened? Why are you here with your bag?" Adora sank into the couch and began to speak. Slowly at first, then faster, as though holding the words in had been choking her for days. She told Amaka everything. How Chike's warmth had turned to ice, how he demanded an abortion, how she refused, and how he let her walk out without a fight. Amaka's hand flew to her mouth. "That's wickedness, Ada. Pure wickedness. Let me call him right now." She snatched up her phone and dialed his number. It didn't even ring, straight to voicemail. She tried again. Same thing. Her frown deepened. Switching to her second phone, she tried once more, but this time the line didn't connect at all. "Try with your phone," Amaka urged. Adora took her own phone, dialed, and her heart sank when the same message appeared. "Number busy." Chike had blocked her, blocked them both. Just like that, he had slammed the door shut. The days blurred into weeks. Amaka's home became Adora's safe harbor. She helped with errands, kept her company, and shielded her from the loneliness that tried to creep in at night. But as Adora's belly began to swell, she knew she couldn't stay on her friend's couch forever. She began searching for a small apartment. Nothing fancy, just somewhere safe enough to raise a baby. She didn't tell her family. Not her mother, not her father, not even her cousins. She already knew the verdict they would pass. That she had shamed herself, been careless, ruined her future. The thought of their disappointment was a weight she couldn't add to the heartbreak she was already carrying. So she smiled on phone calls home, pretending everything was fine, claiming work was keeping her busy in Lagos. In reality, she was going to hospital appointments, saving every naira she could, and sketching out a plan for life as a single mother. At night, in the quiet of her new apartment, she would sit by the window, one hand on her belly, and whisper, "It's just you and me now, but I promise I won't fail you." The birth. When labor pains came, it was Amaka who rushed her to the hospital. Amaka who held her hand through every contraction. Amaka who wiped the sweat from her face and reminded her to breathe. When the baby's first cry rang through the room, Adora's tears flowed freely. She held her daughter close, inhaling the sweet, warm scent of new life, her heart swelling with fierce love. For the first 3 months, Amaka was her rock. Feeding the baby at night, cooking when Adora was too exhausted, rocking the tiny girl to sleep when colic made her cry for hours. But one morning, Amaka sat beside her and spoke gently. "Ada, you know I love you, and I'll always be here, but I have to go back to work next week. I can't be around all the time anymore." Adora nodded. She understood. Amaka had given more than anyone could ask. But it still hit her. She was about to be truly, completely on her own. The call to her mother. That night, she picked up her phone. Her hands shook as she dialed her mother's number. "Mummy, I have something to tell you. I had a baby 3 months ago." The silence on the line was deafening. Then came a sharp gasp. "You what? Adora. You mean to tell me you were pregnant and you never said a word until now?" Her throat tightened. "I didn't know how to tell you. I was scared. But please, Mummy, I need you now." Her mother's voice softened slightly, though hurt lingered beneath it. "You should have told me from the start. I don't even know how to feel right now. Please, Mummy, just come first. I'll tell you everything when you get here." There was a pause. Then her mother sighed. "Adora, I just stocked the shop with new goods a few days ago. If I leave now, they'll spoil and I'll lose everything. Let me sell them for about a month. Then I'll come. I promise." Adora ended the call with mixed emotions. Relief that her secret was finally out. But the ache of knowing help was still weeks away. That night, holding her baby close, she whispered, "Just one more month, my love. One more month, and Grandma will be here." A solution. A few days later, Adora sat in her living room, gently rocking her daughter as the wall clock ticked toward midnight. The thought of returning to work in a few weeks gnawed at her. The idea of leaving her baby with a stranger made her chest tighten. Then she thought of her younger brother, Chisum, 17 years old, fresh out of WEC exams, and free until further notice. He had always been gentle with children, able to make even the fussiest baby smile. She called him immediately. "Chisum, it's Ada." "Ah, big sis, how are you doing?" His voice was bright, warm. She took a breath. "I need your help. Mummy can't come yet, and I'll be resuming work soon. I need someone I can trust to stay with the baby until she arrives. Can you come to Lagos for a while?" There wasn't even a pause. "Of course, sis. Just tell me when, and I'll be there." Relief spread through her chest like warmth. She gave him the details, and he promised to pack that very night and take the first available bus. For the first time in months, Adora felt a small flicker of hope. When Adora ended the call with her younger brother, she sat still for a moment, phone in hand, feeling a strange lightness spread through her chest. The knot of tension that had been living in her shoulders for weeks seemed to loosen, as though someone had finally lifted a bag of cement from her back. For the first time in what felt like forever, her smile was not something she had to force. She knew, of course, that caring for a newborn was no small task, especially for a teenage boy who had never so much as babysat a neighbor's child before. But there had been something in Chisum's voice during their conversation, an eagerness, a kind of boyish excitement, that planted a fragile seed of hope in her heart. Maybe, just maybe, this could work. That night, while she fed her daughter in the warm dimness of the bedroom, Adora leaned her cheek against the baby's soft hair and whispered, "Your uncle is coming to meet you, my love. We're going to be fine." The baby suckled contentedly, her tiny fingers curling and uncurling, and Adora let herself believe the words. Before she went to bed, Adora transferred Chisum the transport fare. Barely 5 minutes later, her phone buzzed repeatedly. He had sent a flurry of voice notes, each one more animated than the last. "Thank you, sis. You don't know how much this means. I'll leave early in the morning so I can reach before noon." His laughter rang through the messages, genuine and infectious. And true to his word, at the first blush of morning light, Chisum boarded the earliest bus out of their hometown. By 11 a.m., Adora's phone vibrated with a short message. "I don't reach Lagos." Quickly, she strapped Kayamika into her stroller. The Lagos heat pressed down on her, the kind that made the air shimmer, but she hardly noticed. It had been years since she last saw her brother. When she spotted him across the parking area, tall and lanky in a black hoodie that looked far too warm for the weather, she felt a burst of affection. He spotted her too and broke into a grin, jogging towards her. "Big sis," he called, hugging her with just enough care not to bump the stroller. Adora bent down and gently lifted her daughter so he could see her better. Chisum, meet your niece, Kayamika. He crouched, his long limbs folding awkwardly, and peered into the stroller. His voice softened in awe. She's so tiny, and so beautiful. His hand reached forward, tentative, to brush her little fingers. They walked home together, talking about his recent school exams, the antics of his friends back in the village, and the changes in their hometown since she had last visited. Chisum carried his small travel bag, swinging it lightly with the careless energy of youth. When they reached the apartment, he placed his bag in a corner, his eyes immediately locking onto the Wi-Fi router sitting on the shelf. His face lit up like someone who had stumbled upon buried treasure. "Wait, you mean I have unlimited internet here?" he asked, his voice full of mischief. Adora laughed. "Yes, but don't think you came here just to be pressing phone. You're here to help me." "No wa'ala," he replied quickly, already pulling out his phone. "I'll help you and still enjoy this network." That evening, after they'd eaten dinner, Chisum sat cross-legged on the couch, holding Kayamika in the crook of his arm while watching videos on his phone. Every so often, he would pause to make funny faces at her or gently rock her. From the kitchen doorway, Adora watched them, a quiet smile spreading across her face. For the first time since giving birth, she didn't feel so completely alone. The first 3 days after his arrival were a crash course in newborn care. On the very first morning, Adora sat him down with Kayamika in her arms. "Chisum, watch closely. Always hold her head like this. Support her neck. Babies are delicate," she instructed. He nodded seriously, mimicking her hand position until she was satisfied. Next came feeding lessons. She demonstrated how to prepare formula, checking the water temperature with a drop on her wrist, shaking the bottle gently, and holding it at just the right angle so Kayamika wouldn't swallow too much air. Chisum leaned forward, absorbing every detail. By the third day, he could feed her on his own, humming tunelessly as she drank. "See you, Uncle of the Year," Adora teased one afternoon, catching him swaying side to side while holding the bottle. Lagos life suited Chisum far more than the village. Steady electricity for most of the day, a clean and tidy apartment, and, of course, his favorite perk, unlimited internet. He made video calls to friends to show off his new job, sometimes balancing Kayamika in one arm while grinning into the camera. Late at night, when Adora and the baby were asleep, he would binge-watch football highlights or comedy skits, his laughter echoing softly through the sitting room. Yet, to Adora's pleasant surprise, he never completely neglected his duties. If Kayamika cried, he would pause his videos, scoop her up, and rock her gently until she calmed down. She found herself, more than once, watching him from the kitchen, her tall, awkward teenage brother holding her baby with the tenderness of a seasoned parent, and feeling an unexpected wash of relief. By the end of the first week, Adora felt ready to attempt her first day back at work. Early Monday morning, she laid out the baby's feeding and sleeping schedule in detail, walking Chisum through each step. "No pressing your phone while feeding her," she added, raising an eyebrow. He grinned sheepishly. "Yes, madam." That day went better than she could have hoped. When she returned in the evening, she found the dishes washed, the apartment neat, and Kayamika sleeping peacefully in her crib. Chisum looked up from the couch with a satisfied smile. "I told you she's safe with me," he said. The next morning followed the same smooth rhythm: feeding, diaper changes, playtime. By mid-morning, Chisum had settled on the couch with his phone while Kayamika napped. Scrolling through Facebook, a post from a friend caught his eye. The caption had a string of laughing emojis and a must-watch tag. Curiosity tugged at him, and he tapped it without much thought. At first, he wasn't sure what he was seeing. But within seconds, the nature of the video became clear. His eyes widened, yet he didn't look away. When it ended, he kept scrolling, clicking similar links. He had heard of such videos before, hushed conversations among friends at school, whispered jokes after class, but this was his first time actually seeing them. A strange heat spread through him, the kind of restlessness he didn't know how to name. Each video seemed to pull him deeper, feeding a curiosity that had been sleeping quietly all his life but now was fully awake. By the time Kayamika began to stir in her crib, Chisum had watched several more clips, each one leaving him with an unfamiliar, unsettling energy. He quickly locked his phone and stood up, his heartbeat still a little faster than usual, as he went to tend to her. An idea came to him. He saw how the guys always put their fingers in the lady's vaginal before the intercourse. He wanted to give it a try to know how it feels like. He has never seen the real thing apart from that of Kayamika. He wanted to try it with Kayamika. He has changed her diaper severely, so he is aware that it's the little version. So he stared at her. Her eyes were wide opened. He took off her diaper. Innocent Kayamika eyes were calm and helpless. Then, he opened her tiny legs wide. He saw the little hole. He took his time to examine it. His heart was beating faster. He was aroused. Then he tried to insert his pinky finger in her vaginal. It didn't go inside first. He had to apply some lubricant so it can pass through. Immediately his fingers were inside. He saw her bleeding. Kayamika started crying because it was painful. He quickly removed it, wiped the blood and trying calming her down by putting food in her mouth. Deep down he wanted to do more. He was cross-checking her vaginal from time to check if it was bleeding. He saw just blood spotting. Then she slept. That evening, Adora returned home to find Chisum seated on the couch with Kayamika in his lap, bouncing her gently and making silly faces until she squealed with laughter. The sound was like balm to Adora's tired spirit. She dropped her bag by the door and leaned on the wall for a moment, watching them. "You're doing so well, Chisum," she said warmly, walking over. "I don't know how I'd manage without you." Chisum grinned, rocking Kayamika side to side. "I told you, big sis. No need to worry when I'm here." Adora smiled and went into the bedroom to change out of her work clothes. Her muscles ached from the long day, but knowing her daughter had been safe made it easier. After slipping into a loose dress, she went into the nursery to check Kayamika's diaper before bedtime. She hummed softly, a little tune she always sang during changes. "Mama's here, my baby," she whispered, keeping her voice light. Kayamika cooed and kicked her tiny legs as Adora undid the straps of the diaper. But when she opened it, she froze for a moment. Amid the normal mess, there was something that caught her eye. A faint smear of red, small dots mixed in with the stool. Her brows knitted together. She gently lifted the baby's legs higher for a closer look. Kayamika's expression was calm, not crying or showing any signs of discomfort, which made Adora wonder if it was really something to worry about. Maybe it's just from straining," she murmured under her breath. She had read somewhere that babies could sometimes have tiny streaks of blood if they were constipated or had a little tear from passing a hard stool. That explanation seemed reasonable enough. She studied her daughter for a moment longer, not realizing that she was looking in the wrong place entirely. To her, the thought that it could be anything else didn't even cross her mind. Sighing softly, she shook her head. "You'll be fine, my love." She reached for the wipes, cleaned Kayamika with extra care, and applied a thin layer of baby cream before securing a fresh diaper. The baby gurgled happily, waving her hands as though the little ritual was just another game. Satisfied, Adora lifted her daughter into her arms and returned to the living room. Chisum was there, slouched comfortably with his phone, earbuds in. He looked up briefly when she walked in. "She's fine," Adora said with a smile, gently bouncing Kayamika in her arms. "Thanks again for taking care of her today." "Anytime," Chisum replied casually, eyes flicking back to his screen. Adora sat beside him, unaware that a faint ripple had passed through the calm surface of their days. To her, it was just another ordinary evening, routine, predictable, safe. But somewhere, beneath that normal rhythm, something small and troubling had begun to take root. The next day, Adora left early for work, as usual, leaving Chisum in charge. Not long after she left, Chisum settled on the couch with his phone. The house was quiet, except for the soft cooing of Kayamika in her crib. He found new set of pornographic videos the day before, and his curiosity pulled him deeper. He pressed play, his attention focused on the screen. After watching for a few minutes, he really wanted to put it into action with little Kayamika. He wasn't concerned if she was a child, he just wanted to give it a try and see how it's like. His friends were always talking about it. As usual, he removed her diaper, opened her legs wide. He could see the cut from the last time in the inside. But he wasn't concerned. He applied lubricants around his penis and tried to penetrate. It didn't go in at first. Kayamika was awake, watching him, about crying. Then he decided to force it in. She burst into tears. She was loud, bleeding. He quickly covered her mouth but continued stroking. He never knew he covered her nose too, so she couldn't breathe in the process. He kept on doing it. She was struggling to breathe and in pain. Few seconds later, the room was silent. Chisum continued. When he finally reached orgasm, he discovered Kayamika wasn't moving. Tears all over her face. Eyes opened, still. Kayamika? Chisum's voice came out in a thin, trembling whisper as he bent over the tiny figure on the bed. Her eyes were half open, glassy and unfocused, staring at nothing. She didn't move. A wave of panic hit him so suddenly it was like ice flooding his veins. No, 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 please get up, get up. His voice cracked as he shook her lightly, but her body felt heavy, limp, like a doll that had been left too long in the cold. Kayamika, please. His voice rose now, desperation breaking through, but there was no answer. His hands began to shake so violently he could barely keep hold of her. The phone he had been holding slipped from his grip, clattering onto the tiled floor beside them with a dull thud. The video on the screen was still playing silently, its glow casting a pale light across the room, like an unfeeling witness. And in that moment, standing there, shaking, with the weight of her tiny body in his arms, Chisum realized what had happened. Curiosity, foolish, selfish curiosity, had caused this. And now nothing could undo it. His mind became a storm, thoughts spinning and smashing into each other so fast he couldn't grab hold of any of them. His breathing grew loud, ragged, uneven. What will I do? What will I tell Adora? The words stumbled out of his mouth, barely more than a whisper. His eyes darted wildly around the room, searching for something, anything, that could fix this. But all he saw was the evidence of what he had done. The air felt heavy, suffocating, pressing in on him. He wanted to cry, to scream, but his throat was clamped shut by terror. Then, through the blur of panic, his gaze caught on the backyard door. In the far corner of the yard stood the old deep freezer. Adora had stopped using it years ago. It had been unplugged for so long that dust had built up along the edges, and the metal was dull and cold to the touch. To Chisum, in that frenzied state, it wasn't just an old appliance. It was a hiding place. His heartbeat thundered in his ears as he stepped outside, clutching Kayamika's lifeless body to his chest, as if afraid the wind would snatch her away. Every shadow felt like it was watching him. When he reached the freezer, he pulled at the handle. The lid gave a stiff creak, opening slowly, and a faint metallic smell, dry, stale, and cold, drifted into the night air. His hands hesitated over the opening. For a moment, his mind screamed at him to stop. But fear was stronger than reason. With trembling fingers, he lowered her inside, arranging her carefully, almost tenderly, as though she were just sleeping. But her skin was cool beneath his touch, and the stillness of her tiny chest made his stomach twist in on itself. The sight nearly broke him. He slammed the lid shut as if to block it from his mind. He stumbled back into the house, breathing hard, yanking off his blood-stained shirt and trousers. He stuffed them into a plastic bag, his movements frantic, almost mechanical. His skin prickled with sweat even though the air felt cold. Within minutes, he had thrown on clean clothes, grabbed his phone, and slipped quietly out the front door. No note.
No explanation.
Just silence in his place. To Chisum, running felt like the only thing left, easier than facing the hurricane that would hit when Adora came home. That evening, Adora returned with a small, satisfied smile, balancing a nylon bag in each hand. Inside were fresh packs of diapers, powdered milk, and a few food items she thought Chisum would enjoy. She was tired from work, but comforted by the thought that her daughter was safe at home. "Chisum, I'm back," she called cheerfully, kicking the door shut behind her. Silence. She frowned lightly, thinking he might be in the bedroom, rocking Kayamika to sleep. She walked in, her smile fading when she saw the bed empty. The baby's blanket lay rumpled exactly where she had left it in the morning. "Chisum?" she called again, her tone sharper now. "Where are you?" Still no reply. Her chest tightened. She dropped the bags onto the floor and moved toward the kitchen, her eyes scanning corners, checking the high chair, glancing at the playmat, empty. Then, out of the corner of her eye, she saw something on the tiled floor. A small smear, dark, red. She froze. Bending down slowly, she touched it with her fingertip. It was slightly sticky, fresh enough to still cling to her skin. Blood. Her breathing became shallow, almost gasping. She followed the smear across the kitchen floor toward the back door. Step after step, her heartbeat pounded harder, each footfall heavy with dread. The trail ended at the deep freezer in the far corner of the yard. Her hands began to shake violently. "No, no, no," she whispered, barely able to speak. She grabbed the handle, pulling with trembling strength. The lid opened with a groan, and then she saw her, Kayamika, lying motionless, eyes half closed, her skin pale, her tiny dress stained with dried blood near her head. Adora's scream ripped through the air, raw and broken, a sound that seemed to tear from the deepest part of her soul. She collapsed to her knees, clutching the edge of the freezer for support as tears blurred her vision. Her body shook so violently she could barely keep herself upright. Her mind rejected the scene in front of her. She had just kissed that tiny forehead that morning, had heard her giggle, had left her safe. And now she was staring at the impossible. The quiet of the evening was gone. The air was heavy with grief, and Adora's world had shattered in one brutal moment. Thanks for watching. Kindly like, share, and subscribe for more amazing stories.